In Generation 1 competitive singles, Chansey is an absolute monster. Chansey is a member of a trio called the Big Three. Chansey's two other partners in crime are Snorlax and Tauros. These three Pokemon are so powerful that they are auto-includes on just about every single competitive team. Believe it or not, Normal is the best type in Generation 1, and among these three dominant Normal types, Chansey stands out as the defensive queen. Chansey's incredible defensive stats and vast move pool, including myriad defensive, offensive, and utility options, are simply unmatched. Let's take a look at what makes Chansey such an important part of Gen 1 competitive teams. But first, a funny update. It seems that the notorious Iron Mugulis has been sighted engaging in a bit of tourism. Here he is, pictured alongside the world-famous Sydney Opera House. As a masterpiece of modern architecture himself, this makes a lot of sense. Head over to JimCool.com to get an Iron Mugulis of your own, now available in Canada. It may sound weird to say that Normal is the best type in the game, but it's true. There's a few reasons for this. First of all, Normal is an amazing neutral defensive type. It's only weak to a single other type, fighting. And in Gen 1, fighting types are quite bad and extremely uncommon. The best fighting type attack in the game is Submission, which is really terrible. This move has 80 power and only 80 accuracy. This alone would be underwhelming, but on top of that it also has recoil. You take 25% of damage dealt as recoil every time you use this move. Recoil is usually a downside of moves with above average base power like Double Edge or Brave Bird, but Submission has below average base power. This move having 80 accuracy doesn't really make much sense either, as if it wasn't bad enough already. I'm not sure why they decided fighting types wouldn't get any moves back then, but Gen 1 is just weird like that. There's a lot of nonsense in these games. But this is great news for Normal types who have basically no super effective moves to worry about. And unlike fighting types who have a single terrible stab option, Normal types got multiple good stab moves. Body Slam is one of the best moves in all of Gen 1. This move has 80 power, 100% accuracy, and a 30% paralysis chance. Paralysis is really significant in Gen 1 since there aren't very many anti-status mechanics. In later gens, there are abilities like Natural Cure that can heal status, and at least in Gen 2 you have Rest and Sleep Talk as an answer to status effects. In Gen 1 those safety nets aren't really there, and spreading paralysis is a very common strategy. Dealing solid stab damage while spreading paralysis at the same time is great for obvious reasons. Another amazing option Normal types have access to is Stab Hyper Beam, another one of the best moves in Gen 1. Hyper Beam has a massive base power of 150, but it has a drawback. After using it, you're completely unable to move the next turn, and have to sit there recharging. But in Gen 1 there's a mechanical quirk that can let you bypass this drawback. If you KO the enemy Pokemon with Hyper Beam, you don't have to recharge. And it's not too hard to KO Pokemon with this move thanks to its high power, especially if it's stab boosted. This is a central move in Gen 1 and one of the best ways to clean up teams and earn KOs. And Normal types are obviously the best Pokemon at taking advantage of that. Withstanding these powerful normal stab attacks is also pretty difficult in Gen 1. Steel type didn't exist yet, so it was up to Rock and Ghost types to handle the normal onslaught. Rhydon and Gengar are the two most commonly seen answers to normal type attacks, but the two most popular normal type threats, Tauros and Snorlax, can pretty easily cover these Pokemon. Tauros and Snorlax both have access to Earthquake, which hits both Rhydon and Gengar super effectively. Rhydon does have high defense to stomach the Earthquakes, but Tauros can also run Blizzard as special coverage, and Snorlax can use Blizzard, Ice Beam or Surf to punish Rhydon. Another trait that makes normal types so good is their immunity to Body Slam paralysis. This is a mechanic that was actually discovered quite recently, but in Gen 1, normal type Pokemon are completely immune to the Body Slam paralysis effect. As I said earlier, immunity to status effects is rare in Gen 1, so that insurance against Body Slam's rather high paralysis chance is very significant, and this is one of the qualities that makes Chansey so excellent. While Chansey can't take advantage of those powerful normal stab moves, like Snorlax and Tauros can, Chansey is by far the best defensive normal type of the three. Snorlax is good defensively too, but as a healing move it only has access to Rest. Rest is less reliable in Gen 1, since the act of waking up consumes an entire turn. In later gens you can act on the same turn that you wake up, but not in Gen 1. Chansey, however, has Soft Boil for immediate healing. A recent development on Chansey since the discovery of the Body Slam mechanic is the use of Reflect. Reflect used to work quite differently, and in later games the move was reworked. But in Gen 1, Reflect simply grants the user a doubled defense stat. The effect goes away once they switch out. Chansey has a low base defense defense stat, so Reflect allows Chansey to withstand body slam damage and now 1v1 physical attackers. It's completely safe from being paralyzed and can heal off the damage easily. It can fight back with Thunder Wave, Seismic Toss, Ice Beam, or even Counter. Chansey also greatly benefits from another strange Gen 1 mechanic, the Special stat. In Gen 1, Special Attack and Special Defense were not separate stats. Instead, these two stats were combined into a single stat called Special. Because of this, Chansey effectively has a base 105 Special Defense stat and a Special Attack stat, much higher than its base Special Attack stat of only 35 from Gen 2 onwards. So not only is Chansey the best special wall in the tier, shrugging off hits from threats like Alakazam and Starmie with ease, it also hits pretty hard itself. Chansey's Thunderbolt greatly threatens enemies like Starmie, Cloyster, and Lapras, and Ice Beam threatens enemies like Rhydon and Zapdos. Sing is another great option on Chansey, although it's inaccurate. Chansey has more than enough bulk to keep using the move until it hits something, and the impact of Sleep in Gen 1 makes this move well worth using on the right teams, especially if you can't afford to use a more conventional Sleep user like Exeggutor or Jinx. A rather infamous element of Gen 1 OU gameplay is freeze fishing. In every Pokemon generation, freeze is a massively impactful status ailment. It can only be applied by the secondary effects of moves, usually with a low 10% chance. But when it does happen, the enemy suffers a similar ailment to Sleep, where it is unable to act and has a chance to thaw out over time. In later games, you can at least find those opportunities to thaw, or use Scald to thaw yourself out. But in Gen 1, freeze is even worse. When you're frozen, you can't thaw out at all. You're just frozen forever. The only way to thaw is to get hit by a fire type attack. Not only are fire type attacks very rare in Gen 1, if an enemy Pokemon is frozen, you probably aren't going to use them. Because of this, there's something called the freeze clause in place, a rule where only one Pokemon can be frozen at a time. Despite the low 10% freeze chance on Ice Beam and Blizzard, the high reward of freezing an enemy makes fishing for freeze chances a common strategy. Sometimes it's even advantageous to get one of your Pokemon paralyzed on purpose, just so it's unable to be frozen. Chansey is one of the best Pokemon in the game at freeze fishing. If an enemy like Chansey or Starmie paralyzes you, now you can't be frozen, and you can just sit there and keep using Ice Beam until that freeze eventually lands. I don't love this aspect of Gen 1, but at least the freeze clause helps. Ice types are also immune to being frozen, which is another form of counterplay. But this is undoubtedly one of Chansey's greatest qualities. This is the best defensive Pokemon in the format, with unmatched bulk, so it's going to have the most opportunities of any Pokemon to land a freeze over time. While a lot has changed in Gen 1 OU over the years, one thing has remained consistent, and that is the high usage of Chansey. Even before the Body Slam immunity mechanic was discovered and implemented, Chansey dominated the format, and was on nearly every single competitive team. Out of all the big three Pokemon, Chansey is probably the hardest to justify cutting from a competitive team. Without a Chansey of your own, you'll very easily get outvalued and overwhelmed by the enemy's Chansey, as it walls your team, spreads status, and heals repeatedly. I think there's a solid argument to be made that Chansey is the best Pokemon in this format. But what do you think? Who is the most powerful member of the big three in your eyes? Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you for watching. Thank you to the patrons for your continued support, and thank you as well to everyone who has donated to my Gen 3 OU tournament, ADV Revival.
Whoa! KO'd by one hit! It scattered light!
The money got different, 'cause of what I'm spending.